Hello, welcome along to our latest look at the Weatherquest farming forecast. We're over halfway through January now. It's been a very wet January for some parts of the UK. In fact, looking at some of the groundwater stations in East Anglia in particular, this one here picked on the Cambridge-Essex border, and you can see the trends in groundwater levels over the last 3 years or so. We'll all remember summer 2018, of course, being very dry and very warm. And that came after a rather wet winter. So at the time, water levels weren't a massive concern, and certainly in groundwater terms, river levels perhaps something a little bit different. But notice how dry it was through 2018-2019 winter, and then we went into another spell of hot weather, and that's where the concerns started coming about shortages of water supplies, potentially, if we didn't get enough rainfall. Last winter, of course, very wet indeed. That's when the groundwater here recovered to near normal. But this winter, now the data's delayed by a couple of weeks, but even in early January we were above average and heading up towards the higher categories. So it looks like for some parts of East Anglia that the groundwater levels right now are the highest they've been for at least 3 years. Other parts of the UK further north, because last winter was a lot wetter than this winter so far, the groundwater levels aren't quite as significant in that comparison with the last 3 years, but certainly further south it's pretty soggy. Groundwater levels very high, but also the moisture of the soil as well is also pretty high, and for some places again that's also the highest it's been for the past 3 years or so. So the ground is pretty sodden at the moment, and there is unfortunately more rain on the way. Taking a look up top at the jet stream, a rather convoluted pattern here. We've got an arm of the jet coming up across Greenland, then back down. This is sort of an amplified meridional pattern, if you like. Things become a bit slow moving and stuck. At the same time, a very strong piece of jet here, but well to the south. And this is the sequence we're going to be in for the next couple of weeks. The bulk of the jet activity shifted to the south from its normal track, which would be across the Atlantic and to the north of Scotland. At this time of the year, or across Scotland at least. So running this sequence through, notice that the pattern is pretty messy, but a lot of the main jet activity is generally south of the UK most of the time. That keeps Scotland in the colder air throughout the next week or so, but it also directs areas of low pressure across southern half of the UK rather than the centre of the lows going to the northwest. Now, usually in the winter the lows track between Iceland and Scotland, but the ones we're dealing with now are coming right over the UK or staying to the south, and that just shows you how the pattern has overall shifted south from normal for the time of the year. And right on that margin is this temperature gradient, so pretty mild air across the UK middle part of the week in the south. In fact, some places have hit double figures for the first time this year, but across Scotland in the rather chilly air. And you'll notice over the next couple of days as the deep low spins up over the UK, we're going to drag in some rather chilly air from the northwest on Thursday, so it does turn chilly for all of us, I think, through the second half of the week and into the weekend. But it's likely by early next week, with the next weather system coming in, we'll see the mild air returning again into southern areas once more. So it's that sort of oscillation between bouts of mild weather, but with that wind and rain, and then a few days of colder weather, but also brighter conditions with some showers. So this is how things are looking for Wednesday. Low pressure over the UK. In fact, this will be deepening all the while. A lot of isobars are quite windy on the southern flank of this low. A lot of rain piling up onto those western hills as well. But north of the low, Scotland, maybe parts of Northern Ireland, not doing too badly, certainly by Thursday, with things improving a little bit, but there will be the potential for some disruptive weather even in Scotland on Thursday, as we'll see in a moment. So running this sequence through Wednesday and into Thursday, that low pressure continues to deepen, the rain continues to pile up, and notice this increasing snow signal on the backside of this low. As that clears through, cold air starts wrapping around it. We're going to see some significant snow by the looks of things. Now, although it comes drier in the south on Thursday, we've got to keep an eye on these areas of low pressure, these small-scale secondary lows rotating around the main parent low, because these can occasionally, depending on their track, graze into southern parts of the UK and bring the threat of a bit of rain and possibly a bit of sleet or snow on the northern edge of them as well. But obviously, if they stay further south in France, then they won't cause any issues here in the UK. And this is something we need to keep an eye on right the way through into the weekend. Of course, the main jet activity is south down here, helping to spin up these areas of low pressure. Then as we head towards the weekend, the pattern is roughly the same for several days. Our low pressure starts to clear off to Scandinavia. We get a cold northwesterly flow, so plenty of wintry showers into Scotland, Northern Ireland, and some showers getting into other western parts. But notice these more organised troughs, these small scale features running into southern England. There goes one into France. This could potentially be a bit further north. So there's just that risk that along some southern parts of the UK into the weekend, we might see these small systems giving some longer spells of rain. But if they stay further south, then actually much of the weekend might end up being dry. So there is still a bit of uncertainty about that specific detail in the forecast. But further north, it is a story of sunny spells and wintry showers. The showers most frequent near the coast with an onshore wind. And again, they will be wintry, perhaps even to low levels at times. A return to overnight frost as well by the weekend as temperatures start coming down from the mild air that we've got across southern Britain at the moment. So as I said earlier, there's a lot of rain to come. This takes us through until about lunchtime on Thursday, and you can see the rain really piling up on these western hills. The purples here, where over 70 millimetres is expected, and some parts of the higher ground of the Pennines, for example, could see 150 millimetres, perhaps Snowdonia up to 200 millimetres. So very wet, and you can quite clearly see where these high ground areas are on this particular model. Even Dartmoor showing up with some pretty wet conditions too. Not as much rain across Scotland and indeed across the far southeast of England, but any rain falling on the already saturated ground poses the threat of some further flooding issues. The river levels are very high, and as I say, groundwater levels are also very high as well. So rain is one issue, and even though the rain will ease on Thursday, I suspect with this still feeding through the river systems, flooding will continue to be a threat even into the latter part of the week and perhaps even into the weekend. But as that low clears, we start to see significant snow developing across a good part of Scotland through the day, Wednesday night into Thursday. Parts of the Grampians could see 40 centimetres, for example, as you can see here. And even the southern uplands, we could be looking at anywhere up to about a foot, 30 centimetres of snow during that time. Coupled with strong northerly winds, there could well be blizzards, and that will drift the snow around as well. So even when roads get cleared by snow ploughs, the snow may just blow back onto the road again because of the strength of those winds. So that's something to bear in mind. That could be quite disruptive Wednesday night into Thursday across parts of Scotland. We might even see a brief spell of snow also across the Pennines, parts of the higher ground of Wales as well, early on Thursday morning as that low clears and the cold air tucks in behind. So rain, snow, also the potential for strong winds. We could see gusts 50 to 60 miles an hour along some North Sea coasts, running down the North Sea as that area of low pressure departs on Thursday morning as well. So quite an active week of weather, lots to chop and change and a lot of variation from one place to another. If you want more information on your part of the UK, the best advice really is to give our forecasters a call. We're available every day, 6 in the morning through till 6 in the evening. We're looking at all of this data throughout this week and indeed looking further ahead as well. So if you want some advice on what the weather might be doing in your part of the world, then give our forecasters a call and we'll try our best to help you out and answer your questions. Now into next week, and it looks like the start of the week we might see a very transient ridge of high pressure building, and it probably won't last too long, but at least for a time on Monday perhaps it could be something a little bit drier but colder. We've got a northwesterly flow ahead of it, still bringing these showers around these western coasts, so feeding through the Irish Sea into the Cheshire Gap, West Wales for example, and further wintry showers in western Scotland as well. As I say, I don't think that ridge is going to last very long. You can already see the next area of low pressure spinning out west, and this will eventually come in, and on the leading edge we might again have another spell of snow, most likely across the higher ground of northern Britain, but something to keep an eye on. Behind it though, yet more rain coming on saturated ground, mild air also feeding in with this system as well, and that will come in quite quickly, perhaps late Monday into Tuesday. So there will be these brief drier interludes when you get these ridges, but then the next weather system hot on its heels, and I think that's really how it's going to go, not just for next week but actually for the next couple of weeks, where we get one low coming through and clearing off to the east, a little transient ridge with something a bit drier in between, and then the next low is already waiting to come in quite quickly after that. So there's sort of oscillation. Now when each low comes in, you'll get mild air initially, and then cold air feeds in behind it, and then followed by yet again another bout of mild air as the next low comes in. And again, these mainly focused across England and Wales, south shifted because of the jet stream, while Scotland stays in the brighter, colder conditions much of the time, but with further wintry showers. And again, on that boundary between these weather systems coming in and the cold air in place further north, we could again see some further significant snow events over the next couple of weeks. So this is how next week looks sort of averaged out for the week as a whole, and a clear signal here for below average pressure, i.e. the track of the main areas of low pressure running across the UK through central towards Eastern Europe. It's going to be a very unsettled week across a good part of mainland Europe as well. You can see the greens here where wetter than average conditions are likely, very widespread across the UK or England and Wales at least, across France, Germany and over towards Eastern Europe. Drier than average conditions for this time across the Mediterranean, and because the jet is south shifted, normally it's very wet in Western Scotland and Scandinavia, and actually Western Scotland and a good part of Scandinavia seeing drier than average conditions. at the moment and into next week, because most of the wet weather has actually shifted further south relative to normal for the time of the year. With a flow off the Atlantic though, some very mild conditions across much of Europe through this week. Notice though some very cold air locked in across Scandinavia. And you can see the boundary over the UK, above average in the south, below average in the north, so quite strong temperature gradients across the UK because of this, and that brings the threat then of further heavy rain, but also the risk of some snow across central and northern parts of the UK. And the same will also be true across Europe, with some further potential significant snow as these wet weather systems come in with cold air on the northern flank. Now, as we head into early February, a very similar looking pattern, but if anything, there are subtle shifts that the jet may shift a little bit further south still, and that might steer these areas of low pressure still very close to the UK, but perhaps a little bit further south than the week 2 period, but continuing then to feed into parts of Europe. So again, it's still looking very wet in very much the same sort of places through much of this coming week into the first week of February. Still drier than average in those usual places, northwest Scotland, parts of Scandinavia. And again, the temperature profile is very similar, above average across southern half of Europe, below average in the north. But notice these blues are actually just shrinking or extending a little bit further south across the UK. Just a sign that these lows might take a slightly further southward track into the beginning of February, but still looking quite wet at times. So again, still the potential you could have some snow on the northern edge of those systems, perhaps a risk extending a little bit further south come early February compared with how things are playing out right now. Now, this is a long way away, but as we head towards mid-February, that signal to shift things further south continues. Notice the blues are now focused through the Mediterranean this time, where below average rainfall is likely initially, and we're getting more higher than normal pressure to the north. So that implies a greater chance of colder weather developing across northern and northwestern parts of Europe during this time frame. As I say, it's a long way off. The models are still struggling to capture what's going on in the stratosphere right now, with several individual warming events happening and still ongoing at the moment. So I suspect this may chop and change quite a bit, but it's a trend in some of the data that we might get some colder weather more widely as we head towards the middle of February. But as I say, a long way off, so I wouldn't take too much from this at this stage, but it is an interesting signal nonetheless. Now, if we have got northerly or northeasterly winds, what you'll tend to find is inland areas, because we're stopping those Atlantic systems coming in, will actually dry out a little bit, but we will keep frequent showers running down these coasts. So you'll see the brown shading is inland, and we're seeing near or even slightly above average precip nearer these east coasts and also near these west coasts, as these showers either run southwards or southwestwards from the sea obviously generating these showers. And of course, with cold air in place, these could well be wintry as well. So this is something to keep an eye on through that middle part of February, perhaps a greater chance of some wintry weather developing a bit more widely, but it's still a long, long way off at this stage. In the meantime, the next 3 weeks, though, look very similar, and that is it's going to remain cold across Scotland in particular, northern Britain overall, with some wintry weather at times, such as this Wednesday night into Thursday, but there will be further events like that moving ahead in the next couple of weeks or so. Temperatures in the south of the UK will tend to fluctuate quite a bit. Some days will be very mild into 11 or 12 degree territory. Other days will be colder with highs of 5 or 6, for example. But with those weather systems in the south, we are going to see further wind and rain, and that will increase the flooding threat and maintain that threat for the next 2 to maybe 3 weeks. So we're not done with this yet. It doesn't look like a massive change in the pattern until we get through to perhaps the middle part of February, but we'll have to see. It's still a long way off at this stage, but an interesting signal. But with the prospect of more flooding, the best way to keep up to date, apart from calling our forecasters, is of course to follow our various forecast tweets on our social media. Bye for now.